And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Door Stuck. My name is Bach. I'll be your host throughout the show. Joining me on the broadcast, of course, Mr. MagicHelmet, as we get ready to jump into another week's worth of action taking place in the CSGO scene. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, man. Another Friday, another show. It's starting to blur together a little bit as we've done the entirety of the show through the COVID pandemic that's obviously been wreaking havoc on the world, especially in the world of esports, as we saw some news this week that kind of upset ESL's plans in regards to Pro League, but not going to be the topic of discussion for today's show. Nope, today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about upsets in the world of Counter-Strike. We've seen quite a few matches played out this week in ESL's Cologne qualifier, or not qualifier, but event. You want to call it a qualifier because it's online and there's North American and European regions. It's not a qualifier. It's the main event. So we saw what took place in North America with a couple of surprising wins there over bigger teams, and even more surprising is what took place in Europe. Before we get into the details, Mitchell, it's another fun Friday afternoon. How has your COVID week been?
It's Friday, baby. I'm excited. Week has been good. It's pretty much Groundhog Day every day. You know, wake up, log on onto my computer, work throughout the day. You know, maybe play some video games afterwards, and it's the same thing day in and day out. So you know, I think I've adjusted to it, but I want to get out of my house, Mark. Like, please end this. End it now, because I'm going to lose my mind.
Oh, you missed it too.
I haven't
when we
already.
had our company get together. That was like, whoa, there's people. They still exist. I kind of forgot. But
how do I socialize?
Let's take a look at the action that we were speaking of. Of course, talking about what's been going on in the world of Counter-Strike. We're talking about the ESL 1 Cologne events in both North America and in Europe. If you take a look what happened in North America, the surprise there, I guess, to some people, was that Chaos exits the group as the #1 seed, getting a berth to the semifinal performance in Cologne, also now being invited to next seasons of ESL Pro League, much to the chagrin of pretty much every Brazilian that watches Counter-Strike, as their social media continues to poke the bear and farms impressions on people that don't even realize they're doing exactly what they want them to. But Chaos looking great.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun to watch their growth, and for a lot of different storylines. But just looking at this event itself, so they beat 100 Thieves, and that's considered an upset. But you know, it's getting to the point where Chaos is going to start winning these matches against teams that are very similar to 100 Thieves, and start upsetting bigger name teams. The adjustments that they made with adding Zeppa and Leaf have been massive. So, for example, during this match, Leaf top fragged and Zeppa was right below him. And it's been really cool to watch them continue to improve. And, when, these younger kids end up joining these more elevated teams and basically climb the ladder, you just never know how they're going to react, especially someone that's as young as Leaf, who's 16, he might be 17 at this point, but, it might be too much for them, or their skills just don't match the Pro League, but they seem to just be stepping up every time I watch their match. So Chaos beating 100 Thieves, it's considered an upset. I'm sure the bet line was on the side of 100 Thieves, but, Chaos stepped up and got the W, and in pretty impressive fashion. So as you mentioned, there was a birth of all these memes through the Chaos's Twitter. That's been, I think, probably the best part of it. Their social media manager is a genius. Not only is the content fantastic, but just the bait they're using to farm those impressions. Like, give that person a raise. I don't know who it is, but they're doing a really good job.
Oh, she is not quiet about being the social media manager. That's probably one of the best parts. I'm going to try and pull that tweet up just so we can see it. I'm going to pull up a couple of them because it's more than one. They have been farming a gold mine of just these awesome tweets. So let's see. We'll scroll down here. Get these.
I like
on
the trophy one with MIBR.
Oh, that's what really kicked everything off.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here's this one.
Which one are you showing?
I'm showing 3. There's 3. So I have to be careful because the responses are not exactly
yeah, that's like
are
going
not
into
exactly PG.
It's like going into the HLTV forums. Like, there might be some, wholesome stuff, but if you get in there,
I can use this. We'll go ahead and pull up this scene here. So we can use this. Let's take a look at some of them. So Here's one of my favorites. Who let them in the team house? It's just a room with no trophies in it that someone tried to use as an insult for Chaos. They laughed about it. Let's see. They make Pro League. That's not what we're looking for, though. Vanity's wearing cat ears during their match on top of his headset just to further troll fans, which is awesome. Gotta love that. Let's scroll down to the don't touch my garbage. Insulting people, our own players allowed. Other people insulting our players, don't touch my garbage.
Yeah.
You can see like some of you are new here. They really just don't care. And that's what I love about it. It's this idea like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and do these things.
It's full send.
Yeah, you guys are just gonna be like, oh well, that sucks. They're not upset. Here's the one in question though. Yeah, her name is Beth, by the way. Pigmer's stepping up in chat.
I think I followed her on Twitter.
Yeah. Look, I dug up a fossil. You can't tell from that tiny little image, but that's the trophy room for MIBR/SK/LG. Really, it's the trophy room for LG and SK. It's not the trophy room so much for MIBR as their success is pale in comparison to what they did under the previous brands, but nonetheless, it's still the same players. But I thought that stuff was pretty good, so we'll pull off that because I don't want to accidentally pull up some of their responses because good God help us if that actually ends up being the case. So, I mean, just looking at those results, though, I mean, it was not surprising to say that Chaos would do well, but Chaos has not necessarily stepped up on these stages. Sure, they beat they won MDL, beating Triumph. They won Winners League, and then they won Mythic League, beating Triumph again. So it was like, okay, yeah, sure, they're running the Tier 2 scene. In fact, we did a show about how much they won the Tier 2 scene because they were farming it at that point. But to see them step up on this level of stage is huge, and the opportunities that are going to start coming their direction is also massive. They beat Furia, and they beat 100 Thieves, beat Furia 2-0, but the second game goes to overtime, beat 100 Thieves in a 2-1 series that I got a chance to catch a little bit of. And, of course, the chat was blowing up. I mean, just people it's a combination of people talking about the fans of MIBR malding and Brazilian fans getting upset still because they still believe that the guys on Chaos are cheating. And even when they're not going to play a Brazilian team, they still show up. It's so much so that the social media manager has said, like, rent-free. Like, they're living rent-free in that fan base's head, which is totally true.
I don't anticipate that fan base laying off anytime soon. There's a lot of them, and they're very vocal. Mm-hmm. And especially when Chaos is like feeding the fire, they're just shoveling wood onto this as much as possible.
And I don't blame them.
They're biting on it, and I love it. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. One thing I would like to see is the Twitter impressions that account has gotten since they kind of just decided to go full send on their tweets and their memes to where it is now, because there has to be a significant amount of growth with the amount of interaction they're getting.
I mean, I can check that right now. Let's pull it up here. Social Blade. Oh, whoops. I don't want to do that while it's live. We'll do that another time. Forgetting that everyone can see that screen. I was going to pull up their Social Blade and just see like what their impression curve looked like and see their follower growth, looked like. Now, that was what happened in North America. Here's what's happening over in Europe. This is equally as surprising. Big, currently ranked number 1 in the world. Not just Europe, number 1 in the world, out in groups as dead last. Along with Heretics, less surprising, and Mouse Sports. Still a little bit shocking, but not as surprising as Big. A bit of a disappointing performance from the former full German, now semi-mixed squad. As they have brought in the likes of Xantares. Just not what people expected to see, especially an event that means so much to the German scene, even if it is online now.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising to see some of these upsets. And I'm wondering, how much impact the player break had on the performance of these teams. Some of them, the expectation is, hey, you're number 1 in the world, you're one of these top teams. They're going to come in and just, do what they have been doing before this player break. But, there's probably some sort of effect on these players that, maybe they just need to get back into the competitive mode. They need to kind of warm up a little bit. And, if that's the case, that's tough that the first event that you play in is ESL Cologne, one of the biggest tournaments out there, probably, the banner tournament for CS in a lot of people's minds outside of the majors. But I'm wondering if it's just, hey, this is a blip on the screen. This is something that's going to be, that will go back to kind of the norm of the top teams winning. But if you're the number one team and you bomb out the first round, that is a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Now looking at European ranking, I mean, obviously we mentioned that Big is currently at the top of the world. Obviously, that puts them at the top.
How do you feel
in
about
Europe.
that, by the way?
I don't know. Right now, so here's the thing. World ranking right now is stupid. World ranking right now makes 100%. No sense because how can you world rank when players are only playing in their own region? It totally is off. And even though I understand the desire to keep those systems running, the world ranking is just not what it should be because of that.
They just don't have the data to work with.
Yeah, so part of me feels like you should almost put like a pause on the world ranking and just do regional. So it was North America and Europe because that at least makes sense. But even still, that kind of leaves some teams out, like CIS teams who are competing in some of these events. It's harder for them to stay involved because CIS is not necessarily Europe. And their ability to compete against Europeans has been problematic in the past. Looking at players like Adren, when he played for Hellraisers, when he was in Kazakhstan, his connection was awful. He could not actually connect to a German server, which is where most European teams play in practice, because the ping was too high. So, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that we're still utilizing leaderboards. I'm also kind of weirded out by the fact that Complexity qualifies as a European team, even though they are, because of the fact that Rush and Obo are actually the minority there. They're not the majority. They're outnumbered by the Europeans on the roster, so much so that they're actually competing in the European event for ESL 1 Cologne. It's a little bit interesting. But looking at that leaderboard, Big in first place, they've got a massive lead over the second place team, Vitality. The closest team, Vitality, at 752 points. So, I mean, even with Big having a poor performance here, I don't think it's going to impact the standings all that much for them. What we will likely see is a bit of a climb for some of the other teams and a drop-off for Mousesports, who's much closer to the likes of Astralis, who is currently in 11th place, largely in part due to the fact that they haven't necessarily been performing as well, and their dominance was with their 5-man roster playing on LAN. Now they're playing with different teammates playing online. It's totally just jumbled things up.
Yeah, and just looking at this leaderboard in general, it's so weird, some of these teams' placements. I mean, seeing Mousesports at number 14, that's a top 5 team in my mind when LANs are going on. Astralis, now that one's – I still think they're way too low. But, you know, there have been changes to the team where Zipix isn't playing. And there's been some people that have been tagged in to play while some of these players are out. So, you know, it makes sense that they're lower than they would normally be. Number 1 in the world, number 2. But all the way down to 17, that's crazy to me. So those are the 2 teams I look at where the leaderboards like this just doesn't make sense. Obviously, it's, you know, based on performance, but how much data are they actually working off of? But hey, you know, it might be something where, you know, there's just a big shift on how good these teams are relative to the competition. The competition could have just caught up, but, you know, certainly Mousesports and Astralis should be top 10 in my mind, if not higher. And they certainly will be higher in my mind once the LANs start coming up, because that's where they make their real money. You know, those are the LAN legends. So, you know, obviously this is all impacted by the fact that everything's being played online. So they're begging for LANs to come back. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, now taking a look at North America, Gen G and Cloud9 currently sit above Chaos, both teams potentially facing elimination. So Gen G could be knocked out from ESL 1 Cologne. So could Cloud9. Liquid and EG likely to be the 2 that take the top spots for Group B, so I don't think that's really going to change much. But we could see Chaos potentially slide up a little bit on the leaderboard. Maybe. There's still a hefty lead there for the likes of Gen G, and a part of that is also due to the fact that they picked up one of the last LANs in North America with a win at DreamHack Anaheim, which was actually the last LAN that had a live audience, where I got this sweet sweatshirt.
Yeah. Just happened to have it on stream.
Yeah, just happened to have it on when talking about the team. But I could see them sliding up consistently. They're just going to have to keep doing this. Their performance is going to have to continue to trend upwards. My fear right now for Chaos is that they do go to that first LAN when everything kind of settles down, and they don't do well. Yeah. And then that's just going to reinforce this idea that these players were cheating, even though there is so many eyes watching them. Like, realistically speaking, at this point, Like, if you were cheating, you would have gotten caught because everyone's looking for it. There's extra scrutiny added to those players. You're playing with POV cams, and everyone's in the same room. So if somebody had something suspicious going on their screen in the background, you'd see it. That's not the case.
And I'm sure these tournament organizers, I think that's something. If I'm them anyway, they're going to place a little bit of extra scrutiny on those teams, whether or not there's validity to the claims that all these people on Twitter are putting out. They want to make sure that there's credibility with their tournament. So if there's a team called out for cheating, they're going to look into it because they don't want to get shit if they find out there's a team that's been playing in this tournament the whole time, have been knocking out these large teams. That's going to look bad on them. So, I'm sure there's eyes from ESL that are looking into that specifically during their matches, because if they weren't, they're fools.
Now, looking at the final thing, we're going to take a look again at the CSPPA ranking because we kind of have to. Right now, CSPPA has released their own world ranking.
I love how EG is number one.
Yeah, thank God. America, number one.
America.
So EG's at the top, Navi number 2, Furia number 3. They'll most certainly slip a bit after losing and bombing out of the groups here of ESL 1 Cologne. But then the disparity here between the HLTV leaderboards and this one, Big's number 5, Gen G number 7, MIBR is number 8, which confuses a lot of people considering that their recent results leave a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
But then you look, you've got Mouse Sports at number 13, kind of right where they are on the HLTV leaderboards alongside Astralis, 100 Thieves, Cloud9. Where's Chaos on this list? They're number 31, which is where they're at similarly in the world ranking, if I'm not mistaken. They're ranked below teams from the CIS region, which again illustrates part of the problem. Right now, the leaderboards regionally make more sense than they do globally. But we'll see a team like Chaos probably climb a significant amount on this leaderboard over the likes of teams like Nemiga and Forza, Windstrike, maybe VP, probably Gambit. They deserve to jump up quite a lot. And they're going to potentially also lap some teams who are making roster changes. I'm not sure how the CSPPA handles roster changes in regards to their points, but obviously we've had some roster changes recently with the likes of North and Astralis and other teams as well.
Yeah, I certainly expect Chaos to jump. And for on the specifically on the ESL one, they had jumped 4 spots. I don't know when this was last updated, or if it's for based on their performance last night, they've entered that data and then they've gotten more points because of that. But Chaos certainly going to be jumping up, and it's going to be fun to watch their climb. Big fan of Chaos, and just generally you can tell there's different ways that these organizations are measuring success, because clearly, Big being number 1 and then being 5 on a different one, and just the disparity on the placements in these leaderboards. Clearly, they're using different metrics to measure success. And, I don't really have a way to say, hey, this is the better way to do it than opposed to the organization that's doing it the other way, because I don't know how they're calculating it. But there's kind of the look and feel of seeing teams that are historically very good teams that we know are good teams being dropped down towards maybe a lower position than they should be. So, you and I being, avid CSGO watchers, being in the CSGO scene, we have a good understanding of where they, should be. But, having some insight into how it's actually measured would certainly be helpful to get a better understanding. But I don't think that's something they're ever going to tell us.
We'll get a little bit of that from the CSPPA. HLTV is a little bit more obscure.
Yeah,
that's same with ESL. ESL's leaderboard, we didn't even touch on that, the Pro Tour leaderboard. I'm not sure what's going on with that, given everything that's going on. Obviously, the Pro Tour tied in with DreamHack as well, so there was a different way to get points in that system, but it's just all thrown up in the air, especially now that ESL has finally submitted to the fact that ESL's next season of Pro League Season 12 will be fully online, and they will not return to LAN play until 2021.
So depressing.
And all of that will take place in Malta. But that's going to be it for us today on the show, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you guys liked what we had to talk about. If you do like the show, we're live every Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time. You can follow us on social media, Nerd Street Gamers, NERDST Gamers, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also head to our YouTube, like and subscribe these videos. That's also NERDST Gamers. Or you can just follow us here on Twitch to make sure you get all of the notifications for when our shows go live. Mitch, as always, thank you so much for joining me on the show. And Pigmers, hi.
Happy late birthday, Pigmers.
Wait, Pigmers got older? How old is he, like 17 now?
He's like 13.
13. Wow. Happy birthday. Pretty soon you'll be having your quinceanera. We're going to
Yeah.
go ahead and throw things to a close. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.